Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us at the 2020 Virtual Transportation in New York Summit. I'm Zach Williams, your MC for the event, staff writer at Citywide magazine. Got some of the best minds in transportation policy here for you today for two great discussions, as well as some really great presentations from some real legitimate transportation experts. So much going on. The coronavirus pandemic has really highlighted how vital transportation is, not only for public health experts, but really just keeping this city and the state alive through all sorts of difficulties. So before we jump into the panel discussions and our keynote speaker, I'd love to introduce Andrew Batta, technical advisor at the transportation sector at Aptim, who's really going to give us some details about what sort of issues we can expect to talk about today. Andrew?
Okay. Good afternoon, and it's a real pleasure to be with you all. I am pleased to say a few words about Aptim, this global transportation infrastructure and environmental services company that surely most of you know, but perhaps with not much detail. It is a huge enterprise with some very large projects it is undertaking. Aptim has over 100 years of legacy experience, having acquired top-level companies in its growth, such as Stone & Webster. A key, almost heroic undertaking is the post-Maria hurricane multi-million-dollar recovery effort that they are managing in Puerto Rico that is still has a long way to go. And how about building a new hospital in the Virgin Islands, which is also affected by the hurricane? In our area, Aptim is rebuilding the Rutgers Tunnel for the subway. Yes, that's where the AirTrain is running under the East River. Another local accomplishment is the Mother Clara Hale bus depot, a fully LEED compliant facility in Harlem. It is really a leading edge facility and it's worth visiting. And for NYCHA, they are managing a $3.2 billion post-Sandy recovery program. They are also involved in various projects for the Port Authority, and Aptim is known for its streamlined project execution profile. Speed of project delivery is so much in the front of discussions right now. Their range of work, expertise, and track record are amazing. Talking about amazing, I'm honored to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Rick Cotton. Amazing is the right word. As leading the Port Authority for New York and New Jersey for the past 3 years, appointed by Governor Cuomo, it is an amazingly difficult and huge challenge. The port is one of the most respected global transportation and commerce agencies. It is truly multimodal and vital to this region as it covers both New York and New Jersey metropolitan regions. Mr. Cotton has shown a strong and effective leadership with his steady, determined, yet calm approach, which has proven to be so effective with projects such as transforming our airports. And if you have not visited, you should see the new LaGuardia. It is something admire to be proud of. He has also championed key interagency projects like the Moynihan Train Hall and the Pan Folly Rail Station Complex. He has also played significant infrastructure roles in building the new Mario M. Cuomo Bridge and expanding the Javits Center. I should not forget that he also runs PATH, a gem of a high-density system serving this region so effectively. So without further taking up your precious time, here is Mr. Cotton.
Andrew, thank you very much for that generous introduction. It is a pleasure to be here today with all of you. I'm going to spend my time describing the transformative airport redevelopment projects that we have underway, concentrating on our two largest that are currently under construction. If you have the next slide, please. I'm going to touch inevitably on the impact that COVID-19 has had. I'll spend the bulk of my time talking about Newark Terminal 1 and LaGuardia, and also about our sustainability agenda and our diversity agenda at the airports. Next slide, please. So COVID-19, I feel compelled to start every discussion by pointing out and emphasizing that all of the Port Authority facilities have remained open and operating at a very high level, and we are enormously indebted to the dedicated employees, our essential employees, who have reported to their posts day in and day out from day one of the crisis through today. Next slide, please. But that is not to minimize the extraordinary impacts to Port Authority activity and to our financial situation of the virus. Back in the spring, our airports and PATH were down 98% and 95% in terms of their pre-COVID volumes. Bridges and tunnels were down 60+%, and our seaport held up the best, but still down 17%. And today, the situation is not all that much different at the airports and at PATH. The airports have stayed between 75 and 80% down from pre-COVID levels. PATH is between 75 and 80% down from pre-COVID levels. Bridges and tunnels have come back to where they're only, in quotes, down 15%. In normal times, that would be extraordinary. The seaport has held up and proved quite resilient. And in the last 2 months, it has actually exceeded pre-COVID levels. Next slide, please. But the consequence of those activity declines are just have been devastating. These declines are unprecedented. They are the worst that the Port Authority has gone through, at least since the Great Depression. If you look at from March to October of this year, our reported financial results confirm $1.4 billion worth of lost revenues. Our projection has been $3 billion of lost revenues through the first quarter of 2022, and that's really no longer a projection based on our results through that we can now see through the end of this year. We'll be down 1.7 billion in just a little, right around 9 months, and that really is totally confirming our $3 billion revenue loss projection, and the impact is to dramatically affect our Port Authority capital plan, and I'll come back to that. So what we're in the middle of is re-examining the entire capital plan in light of these extraordinary fiscal constraints. We are committed to carrying through on projects that are currently in construction, but the revenue loss and the resulting decline in our capital capacity has really forced us to pause our pre-construction projects while we understand whether we are going to get the federal aid we've requested. We've asked for $3 billion to fill in the lost revenue that we have experienced, and we are advocating strongly in terms of including the Port Authority in any additional stimulus bill and what hopefully will be a follow-on federal infrastructure bill. But at this point, the signals to say they are mixed and unclear is a wild understatement. Next slide, please. So the COVID-19 crisis has precipitated extraordinary changes in our operating procedures, particularly at the airports. I've listed here on the chart multiple safety protocols that we have put in place at the airports, including not only face coverings, most importantly, but literally restricting the airport terminals to passengers and employees. But the result of all of these changes and safety protocol advances has been that within the last 2 weeks, the Port Authority has earned a COVID-19 health accreditation from the Airports Council International, which is totally in the business of evaluating airports. And we are very pleased that they have given us this recognition, and we intend to continue with our focus on assuring that travelers are safe as they move through our facilities. Next slide, please. We have brought in third-party experts to evaluate our safety, and I just wanted to call everyone's attention to the fact that within the last few weeks, the Defense Department and Harvard have both issued reports on studies that they've done, finding that there is an extremely low risk of virus infection on airline flights and in airplanes across the board, and we remain dedicated to ensuring that our airports have the latest safety protocols in place, enforced, and evaluated and monitored over time. Now, turning to our construction projects, the largest ones are our Newark Terminal 1 and LaGuardia. So let me get into that right away. Here are the standards that we guide ourselves by. 21st century across the board, civic art and architecture, best in class technology. As you can see, it goes on, state-of-the-art security, iconic concessions, strong focus on minority and women business enterprises participating, and dramatically improved access to the airports. And let me get now into the two projects. So a terminal at Newark, we've got major projects underway, more than $5.5 billion towards a redeveloped world-class Newark airport. Next slide, please. Here you see broad brush, the footprint of the new 21st century Terminal 1. Highlighted in red is the head house. Next slide, please. Highlighted in red here are the 3 brand new concourses in terms of the progress of the construction. Within the next 30 to 45 days, the head house and the 3 concourses, roof complete, curtain wall complete, weather tight, and the internal work will then proceed at a rapid pace. Next slide, please. Entirely new roadway network to serve the new terminal. You see in the lower left-hand side of the screen, the new parking garage and centralized rental car facility rising. Next slide, please. We've devoted a lot of attention in terms of the frontage to make it bigger and better and have a higher capacity than what existed in the past. We'll have a little bit of an announcement of that in the relatively near future, but that is moving forward with great speed. Next slide, please. Here is the rent-a-car facility that you saw, a little bit smaller pictorial representation in the previous slide. That will also include a brand new parking facility, all of which will be connected through a covered walkway to the terminal. Next slide, please. And we are building an entirely new global station, global standard AirTrain at Newark. Its current AirTrain is way past its useful life and certainly substandard by today's standards. Next slide, please. So the project as a whole will completely replace the aging and terrible Terminal A, 1 million square feet of brand new terminal space, expansive new frontage, cutting edge technology. We're committed to iconic local food and beverage offerings. And of course, this brand new 21st century rail mass transit link, meaning the AirTrain. Next slide, please. Turning to LaGuardia, an $8 billion redevelopment, a brand new airport, the first new airport in the United States in 25 years. We're tearing down every single passenger facility with the exception of the Marine Air Terminal, which is landmarked, and building a new. Here is the rendering of the entire new airport from west to east. And we have 2 terrific private partners, LaGuardia Gateway Partners and Delta, who are our partners in building this new airport. And let me now just bring you up to date in terms of where we are. It is materializing before our very eyes. The area shaded in red, which is primarily Terminal B in the foreground. If you can see at the very top right-hand side, a new Delta concourse is also open. But these have opened, these sections of the airport have opened really at a rapid pace. First new concourse opened literally 2 years ago, has been in use since then, and we've been bringing on new facilities at a rapid pace. Next slide, please. Now, the biggest addition we've made is the Terminal B arrivals and departure hall. Terminal B is now 90% complete. It's open and in use by the public. And we hope that you will see in this in the new Terminal B, the standard that we seek for all of our projects, and as we try to embody the region's infrastructure renaissance. Next slide, please. Now, here are some of the reviews that the new Terminal B is getting. New York's LaGuardia Airport, like you've never seen it before. LaGuardia goes from third class to world class. Hard to believe you're in LaGuardia, disgraceful to breathtaking. LaGuardia's high-flying makeover has travelers doing double takes. But don't take others' words for it. I'm delighted that Andrew had a chance to visit, but let's take a look ourselves at the new Terminal B at LaGuardia. Please roll the video.
Piece by piece, an entirely new LaGuardia Airport is taking shape before our very eyes as new terminals, concourses, parking garages, and roadways are replacing an old and antiquated airport that was reviled by passengers. You can see and experience the progress yourself as 50% of the new LaGuardia, with its sleek and modern exterior, is already open to the public, a manifestation of what is to come. In June of 2020, we welcomed passengers to the extraordinary new Terminal B Arrivals and Departures Hall, part of a $4 billion project developed in partnership with LaGuardia Gateway Partners. On the opposite side of the airport, Delta is moving forward on its $4 billion Terminal C, where a second new head house will open in early 2022. Building on Governor Andrew Cuomo's vision, a whole new LaGuardia Airport will set the gold standard for the nation, a 21st century airport with a 21st century customer experience. Entering Terminal B, the first thing you'll notice is the spacious, light-filled building that is 50% larger than the dark and crowded Central Terminal built in 1964 to serve far fewer passengers. The new terminal is uplifting, with large-scale permanent artworks commissioned in consultation with the Public Art Fund that convey the spirit of New York to visitors from around the globe. At the center of the departures level, Sarah Z's floating sculpture is a monumental globe featuring 900 photos of the sky over New York. Along the largest interior wall in the terminal, Laura Owen's tiled mural is a fantasia of New York icons embedded in a billowy skyscape. Terminal B is beautiful, and it's also functional. Greatly expanded ticket counters and ample self-service kiosks add significant capacity and make for quicker check-in. Security is faster and more efficient with 3 times as many lanes as the old terminal, and cutting-edge technology for baggage screening and body scanning. After security, you'll discover a plaza on the terminal's top floor with shops and restaurants featuring iconic local brands that bring you the best of New York, from grab-and-go options to sit-down dining for when COVID restrictions are eased. An array of shops will offer everything from books to Legos to fashion to products made here in Queens. Artist Yepa Hines' interactive sculptures adorn the plaza with fanciful benches and playful mock balloons along the ceiling. At the center of the plaza, you can marvel at the laser light show projected on a floor-to-ceiling curtain of water, featuring images of New York and seasonal shows, the only installation of its kind in any airport in the nation. Spacious and thoughtfully designed restrooms with touchless features are located throughout the terminal, as well as family restrooms and pet relief areas. A new sky bridge, providing striking views of the city as planes maneuver beneath on vastly expanded taxiways, will take you to the new Eastern Concourse, with more shops, restaurants, and an indoor park. When flying into the new Terminal B, you'll find an all-new arrival experience, including 9 new and expansive baggage carousels to comfortably accommodate even the busiest travel days. Passengers looking for a cab will find the taxi queue is clearly identified, sheltered from the elements, well lit, and features a brand new and efficient loading system. At the other end of the terminal, a short walk down a spacious corridor leads to the shared ride app-based vehicle wait area inside the Terminal B parking garage, with cutting-edge technology to quickly match up customers with drivers. An entirely new airport roadway system that will move vehicles to and from the terminals more efficiently is 75% complete. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the new terminal meets unprecedented challenges with comprehensive attention to safety protocols and touchless technology from the front doors through check-in, concessions, restrooms, and airline gates. Terminal B is the biggest step yet towards a whole new LaGuardia, which will be joined by a new Western Concourse at Terminal B, Delta's new Terminal C, a central hall connecting Terminals B and C, 72 gates across 6 new concourses in 2 terminals, 9.2 miles of new streamlined roadway network, and AirTrain LaGuardia, enabling passengers to get to the airport from Midtown Manhattan reliably in under 30 minutes. New terminals B and C at LaGuardia, a new Terminal 1 at Newark Liberty International Airport, and soon a transformed global hub at JFK International, represent our new standard in airports, best in class compared with what you'll find anywhere else in the world. Welcome to a whole new LaGuardia Airport.
Well, I hope you enjoyed our virtual tour of Terminal A, Terminal B. It is the standard to which we aspire. We believe we are delivering it. We're not making promises. We're actually delivering world-class architecture and world-class infrastructure. Can we move to the next slide, please? Want to spend 2 minutes talking about one of the major criteria that passengers constantly tell us is a key aspect of a world-class airport, which is access. At LaGuardia, we do not have that. Congested roadways lead to the airport, and we force every traveler to arrive at the airport by roadway. It produces unreliable travel times for travelers. It produces congestion and resulting air pollution and greenhouse gases for everyone else. Pre-COVID, the congestion was bad. Post-COVID, as traffic returns, it will get worse. Next slide, please. As I've said, passengers focus on access as a key indicator of airport quality, and LaGuardia is the only major East Coast airport without a direct mail transit connection. And it is our firm conviction that only a rail mass transit link will get people out of cars and off of local roadways. Benefits, I think, are clear, predictable, reliable travel to the airport. We project 6 to 10 million riders annually. It will reduce roadway congestion for individuals and for the neighborhoods that simply want to get from point A to point B. It will certainly reduce greenhouse gas emissions and pollution. It will create 3,000 union construction jobs, hundreds of millions of dollars through contracts with minority and women-owned businesses, and it will involve no takings of private property and no construction in residential areas. Next slide. So the route here is actually quite direct to the airport. This shows from Midtown Manhattan, either Grand Central Terminal, where East Side access will be complete at the point at which the AirTrain is constructed, and Penn Station, to Willets Point Station, and then to LaGuardia. This is a 10-mile journey, and it will wind up 30 minutes or less. Next slide, please. And here, just to make the point, if you look at the dense areas that surround LaGuardia Airport, we have found a route that goes over MTA property. It goes through the median of the Grand Central Parkway along the northern edge and to the airport. It does not touch a dense area. It does not involve any public or private takings. Next slide, please. So the environmental review, which the FAA has underway, FAA chose the alignment that I just showed you as its preferred alternative, and it held 3 days of public hearings, and 80% of the speakers who expressed an opinion at those public hearings supported the AirTrain. Next slide. Multiple voices, transit experts, organized labor, community organizations, environmental advocates, business community, civic and planning groups, including the Regional Plan Association, minority and women-owned business, all have expressed support for the AirTrain. Next slide, please. So I hope by virtue of seeing for yourselves the video on LaGuardia's Terminal B and hearing about plans for the future, you will agree that we have not only set ourselves an ambitious set of standards, but that we are actually delivering on them, and we intend to continue to do so. Next slide, please. Let me touch just in bringing this to a conclusion on the sustainability agenda and the diversity agenda that have animated our projects in general, but specifically our airport projects. The Port Authority was the first public transportation agency in the country to embrace the Paris Climate Agreement. We have set our internal goals in terms of 35% of greenhouse gas emissions by 2025 and an 80% reduction by 2050. And to the extent that global consensus produces more ambitious goals, we will embrace them. As the slide says, we are all in on Paris and we're all in on the region. Our sustainability agenda has broadly focused on five areas: clean electric vehicles, maximum installation of solar and renewable energy sources, achieving energy efficiency standards both at our new facilities but also on a retrofit basis, and setting building standards for our new facilities, which are as focused on green and sustainable performance as possible. And finally, a major effort to focus on rail mass transit in terms of getting people out of cars and contributing to environmental degradation and getting to the airport. Next slide, please. The highlights of our clean electric vehicle efforts. We have actually put into service 36 electric intra-airport shuttle buses, the largest such fleet on the East Coast. We are completely committed to electrifying 50% of our light-duty fleet vehicles by 2023, and a major focus on electric ground support and cargo handling equipment on our airports and seaports. Next slide, please. Highly committed to solar. Right now, we have a full megawatt currently in operation. And our target, however, is to multiply that 20-fold and wind up with 20 megawatts. I would just call your attention to our JFK Airport project, which will be the biggest solar project and energy storage project in New York and the largest on-airport solar in the entire US. And we are looking at every possible place we can deploy a solar energy project. Next slide, please. So finally, on diversity, this is really one of the central commitments and standards of the Port Authority as a whole. We are committed to delivering, not just to talking about it. Next slide, please. The broad objectives are clear: deliver economic benefits in to the neighborhoods surrounding our major redevelopment projects, and really across all our projects, and achieve very, very aggressive MWBE contracting goals as well as local hiring goals. And it has been a little over 2 years since we raised our focus on MWBE to 30% of the contracts issued in these major projects going to MWBE firms. In 2019 alone, we had more than 100 outreach events to local firms. And there were more than 800 minority and women-owned businesses who participated. We're also focused, in addition to delivering contracts and to delivering jobs, to making efforts to expand the capacity of MWBE firms and to provide technical assistance to the extent it is valuable to them. So we have a construction coach program. We've got an academy where architects and engineers can learn about the Port Authority offerings, Port Authority procurements, and indeed have access to people who have been successful in those procurements. And we really are making an effort to provide a way to pierce the fog of procurement intricacies at the Port Authority for small businesses in general. And in particular, we made a particular effort in terms of minority and women-owned businesses that aspire to be airport concessionaires. And as I said, we are focused on producing results, not empty promises. LaGuardia Airport redevelopment literally has delivered more than $1.45 billion worth of contracts to minority and business-owned enterprises. The Newark Airport Terminal 1 project has delivered more than $400 million to MWBEs, and many, many, many of these contracts were to local contractors. We intend to continue to deliver that kind of performance. So that concludes my presentation. I hope I have convinced you that our ambitions are high. Our commitment is total. 21st century infrastructure, that is something that New York has, and New Jersey and the region have not had. We are demonstrating what we can deliver at LaGuardia, and that is the standard that we aspire to across all of our projects. So with that, I will conclude and thank you for the opportunity to talk.
Thanks so much, Rick. That was great. So many exciting things going on at the Port Authority. So much going on in the future. So before I introduce our next speaker, I want to thank our great sponsors for making this event happen. T-Mobile, Aptum, Cubic Transportation Systems, Dataminer, Siemens Mobility, Boingo Wireless, Revel, Transit Wireless, WSP Transportation, and Bus for NYC 88U Coalition, Inc. They're all doing really exciting things. And we got somebody who knows a thing or two about what the future holds for transit. Tim Johnson, Director of IoT, that's Internet of Things, Sales and Public Sector for T-Mobile. He's got something to say about the next level value utilizing transportation data to provide must-have solutions for connected communities.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Zach. It was great to hear from you, Rick Cotton, on that last presentation. I'm sitting here in Detroit at a very quiet T-Mobile office. But I do fly a lot, or I look forward to flying a lot again, and I'm very much looking forward to meeting several of you in the New York State and City area with the great updates to those airports, which I've flown through many, many times. So thank you for that. And Zach, are we good on audio? You hearing me okay? All good? Okay, excellent. Well, good. So again, thank you for this time. Before we click into the presentation, just a couple quick points of context. I only have a few slides and not too many minutes, but it's very important, I think. I mentioned I'm in Detroit, and one of the reasons is a large part is that I've been very much involved in the connected autonomous vehicle, which is also known as CAV these days, and then related intelligent transportation systems, or ITS, and then a third category, and they all overlap, of course, called multimodal modality over the last 15 plus years, let's say. So I take transportation very seriously. Way back, economics major. And I think partly because of that, I see transportation and mobility solutions is a sine qua non, without which none other, for any community to be successful. So again, this is at the heart of my interests personally and professionally. So much of what Rick just discussed, and especially the new upgrades going on at those two world-class airports, are very appropriate. And so what I'm going to do for the next few minutes is overview a couple of things just on the network side, because it is all about the network in many regards in terms of what we can do. And then I want to end my several minutes with a thought starter that I would be eager to join in on follow-up conversations with several of you, many of you, with my team. So with that, I'll ask if we can click to the next slide, please. Thank you. So first of all, and again, I don't want this to be too technical, but it's really important for us all to understand that a carrier such as T-Mobile, of course, is delivering, network is our greatest asset. And really, more so than that, even in the term that's not as well known outside of the carrier space, is spectrum. But the bottom line is, without being a physics major, is that we the carriers utilize radio frequency spectrum. And what's so exciting about the new T-Mobile, so it's really important that I say the new T-Mobile, because I, for example, was somebody that came from Sprint as part of our merger earlier in the year. And really, there's a graphic on this page that within the company, we call it some combination of the layer cake, as you can maybe see, or maybe even the wedding cake, because really it's about the wedding, the marriage of T-Mobile and Sprint. Because fundamentally, what you see in the picture there on the right are three segments of spectrum. And what's really fascinating, and again, it's not by accident, of course, that we're together, is that we can now deliver nationally communication technology over the three critical sections of radio frequency. And said another way, the high frequency bands, which is that narrow cylinder in the top there, it's really urban. So Manhattan, right, or any very dense urban city, it's brilliant, and it's important to have that high frequency. We've got it. And then you move to exurban or suburban, and you need a frequency that travels both farther than city blocks, for example, but also has the ability to carry high-speed data. Well, we've got that. In fact, that was what Sprint brought to the marriage. This often depicted with a yellow there in the mid-band. And then thirdly is low frequency, and that's really more, think of, out ex-rural, really, or, across the entire country. In fact, part of our commitment to the FCC was to marry these bands together so that we could indeed provide network, including 5G network, to the vast majority of the entire United States population. So just a quick 101 about the new T-Mobile network and why we're so extremely excited about it, what we can build on top of it. So that's the base. So if we can move to the next slide, please. So then we take that great spectrum position. It really is a wonderfully advantageous position for us to be in that we're very grateful for. Then with that spectrum, we then say, okay, from a networking technology, and again, there's a lot of words in here some of you may be very familiar with and some not so much, but the net of it is IoT, or Internet of Things, and frankly, it's a term that, again, I'm sure many of you have heard of. I like the term connectivity of things, so I don't think I'm going to change the world by getting people to say COT, but I like that more so, because it really says something that prior was not connected, and it did something functionally okay, and now we're connecting it, and it adds this unlimited new value to what it can do in a connected state, meaning it can say something about itself or receive a command about it to itself. And to do that well, a provider such as T-Mobile has to have the different network characteristics to transmit the data there and back. And so again, we've got it. Again, this is a quick little history lesson / view of the future. And what's great is that the new T-Mobile has access to all of these category. CAT just stands for category, and then NB stands for narrowband, and IoT, as you can understand, is that. So again, we have that, and again, this is all very thoughtful. It's all planned, and there's a reason why I'm in my role today, which I'm very grateful for, because we have the network, we have the spectrum to do the things that we're going to talk about here. So next slide, please. This is where it gets even more interesting. So again, even thinking about what Mr. Cotton was just talking about, all that's going to go into the extraordinary projects at NEWARK and LaGuardia, every single item that's on this page, I think is relevant, frankly, to Rick just spoke about in terms of the use cases there. And that's just, quote, just those two huge projects. And then you think about the state of New York and, not quote, just Manhattan or New York City and the boroughs, but, Schenectady and the thousands of other towns, large and small and medium in between, to deploy telematics, autonomous vehicles. All of these attributes require a well thought through mix of different technologies, ranging from the network side, which represents those first three columns: high bandwidth, low latency, just means fast speed. It's the message has to go there and back very, very quickly. And then range matters. And then you get into things that are even more technical and even as functional but important as getting inside a building, right? RF has to have the right characteristics to go through walls and windows to be effective. And then the other part that's really a big deal is low power. Because of just the enormous scale of connected devices now, and many of you know this in your own personal life, and you might be wearing a Fitbit or something similar, the battery technology is just extraordinary now. And so we need to work with an ecosystem that can provide with the low power devices that we can keep operating for years and years and years. So I think, again, of those two airports, there will just be countless IoT devices scattered throughout to make it an even more pleasant experience for all of us travelers. So next slide. And I'm talking at New York speed here, and we don't have that much time. So this is important, the IoT ecosystem. So again, we, the new T-Mobile, have the spectrum, we have the network on plans and provisioning, and then there's an ecosystem that goes around that. So again, I've had great opportunity in my last several years to be involved in every single aspect of this ecosystem, which I'm very grateful for again, but it requires this in order to deliver seamless and impactful use cases to all of us without even knowing it. So it's the network. We've spoken about that first column. Or even before that, there's the modules, the devices, and the chips. Every one of us that has a smart device inside it, there's every one of those things. There's modules and there's chips inside the device that makes it work, of course. Then they connect to the network. Then there must be some sort of an operating system. And so we, again, the new T-Mobile, have a very thoughtful and very user-friendly platform for our customers and partners to utilize to get the most out of the connectivity. And then the solutions, right? And this, again, this is where my team really steps it up and takes the ball, is that we listen, we say, okay, it's some combination of a package solution, i.e. it's off the shelf. B, we utterly customize it. Or C, there's something that's industry-wide, that's scalable, whether it's an airport or another transit hub that can really use this. And so then we look to scale it. Then there's innovation. Ongoingly, we're looking at what can we be doing with partners, even, again, pretty technical, but moving the processing from the center of the network, as it were, to the core, excuse me, to the edge of the network, just to provide even more and faster processing power. So that's the ecosystem. So clicking ahead, please, a slide. This is the kind of the talk, the slide I want you all to please think about as I move on, and then we go further in the presentations today. It's very important to us to say, there's all of these buzzwords such as what I just spoke about, but how can we make it real? How can we make the rubber hit the road, as it were, for a connected community? And I really enjoy that term more than a smart city. For many reasons, I prefer connected communities. But my thought to put into your thinking is that there's 3 must-have areas, regardless of, again, if you're New York City or any other city. You must be focusing on public safety, environmental sustainability, and certainly fiscal optimization. Because of everything I mentioned so far, we at the new T-Mobile, the IoT team particularly, are working very, again, sensibly and thoughtfully, I'll say it again, to say, how can we take the data that's being generated by all of these sensors and then package it, as it were, and bring it back to your entity or your municipality in this case, to enhance public safety. And these are just examples. There are many, many others within each. There's, mitigating high collision traffic sites that we know are a real sad situation. Operator education, just a moment on that. An operator, a driver that goes either too fast or brakes too fast, that can be a dangerous situation. We have ways to help educating so we can move beyond that and provide a safe environment for the passengers and others. Dynamic road conditions, you may not know this, but there are ways we can tell in real time that a pothole is occurring, right? So we can now immediately bring repair services to that pothole. That's a dynamic road condition. We move to environmental sustainability. Back to what Rick was just talking about, the Paris Accord. We too at the new T-Mobile take that very seriously. We too can help out. How can we help reduce greenhouse gases? There's so many ways to do it, and you can see a few of them clicked off right there. Then lastly, this is real. The numbers that we're talking about, can be enormous, and every dollar can matter. So how can we help get the most out of the budget that you have to enact whatever vision you may have going? So again, those are the 3 things I want you to think about. And then the next slide, it's my last slide, is, myself personally, and the team that I work with in New York State, especially, but I know some of you are not in the state, but especially within New York State, we would be thrilled to enter into conversation with you. How can we identify your current sources of data? Because really, that's what I'm talking about. Back to those 3 attributes. Let's see where the data is coming from. Let's identify it. Let's understand, are there opportunities to enhance those data sources? Can we provide new sensoring technology to get even more out of a commuter's time from home to workplace and back, students, etc. And then we say, got it. Let's now architect something specific to meet your community's need. Make it very measurable. That's something we take very seriously. Let's talk about what is measurable, what is relatively easy as possible to deploy. And then we aim at these 3: safety, environmental sustainability, and fiscal responsibility. So with that, I just want to say, again, super appreciative to be part of this discussion today, and to put some thoughts, hopefully, in with some of you that you may not have thought about before. And we welcome the opportunity to follow up as soon as you wish to talk about how we can make these ideas real for you. So thank you, Zach, for allowing me the time.
Thanks so much, Tim. T-Mobile, of course, is one of our great sponsors for this event. We couldn't have done it without them, as well as other great sponsors like Boeing Go Wireless, Revell, Transit Wireless, WSP Transportation, Cubic Transportation Systems, Dataminer, Siemens Mobility, Aptim, and of course, Bus for NYC 88U Coalition. Now we're getting into the main event. Our two panel discussions. We got the first one is focused on the here and now, the pandemic, how coronavirus is reshaping New York's transit systems. And leading the discussion is Melinda White, Chief Executive Officer at Transit Wireless.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining. You know, COVID-19 has had a devastating effect across the New York City region. Our hearts are certainly with the many friends, families, and colleagues, especially families of frontline employees at MTA, New Jersey Transit, and Port Authority who have passed during this crisis. We all know how crucial public transportation is to the success and vitality of New York City. According to NYU's Rudin Center for Transportation, the projected cuts to MTA could cost the region as much as 450,000 jobs, resulting in $50 billion of lost earnings and $65 billion impact to the regional GDP. As we all heard Pat Foy state back in June, cuts to MTA alone not only impacts the region, but the nation, as MTA accounts for 10% of the national GDP. As we discuss the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact it has had on transit, I'm joined today by a panel of experts leading every single day across public transportation. We will hear their experiences, how each used technology, and what they think and how they plan for the future. I'm very happy to welcome Catherine Rinaldi, President of Metro North Railroad, Phillip Ng, President of Long Island Railroad, Senator Leroy Comrie, the Chair, Committee on Corporations, Authorities, and Commissions, Steve Brunner, Senior Vice President and General Manager for Cubic Transportation Systems, Mike Finley, CEO of Boingo, and John Gasparin, Associate Vice President of WSP USA. I am very impressed with each of you, how you continue to lead as we build back stronger. You are leading with your arms around riders, employees, communities, partners, and other stakeholders. I'd like to start with Senator Comrie. Sir, as a longtime New Yorker representing the people in Southeastern Queens, how have your constituents specifically been impacted? And give us your opinion, your perspective on the importance of public transit for your constituents. Senator?
Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon, I'm Melinda White. I want to thank you for agreeing to host the panel. I want to thank City and State for putting the panel together, and thank you for allowing me to contribute to it as well. You know, Southeast Queens is home to a disproportionate number of essential workers and workers whose commutes by transit take more than an hour and a half each day. So the major effect of this pandemic has been very difficult on these already existing challenges and inequities. And also the overnight shutdown has been particularly difficult for my constituents who work overnight hours or early shifts. The E and F train, they get on at the beginning, and it's their lifeline. Without it, they're left to rely on infrequent bus service and connections, pricey and non-existent Long Island Railroad service, or cabs and ride shares. So, you know, Controller Stringer released a report in March that specifically named my district, Jamaica Hollis, Queens Village, Cambridge Heights, as neighborhoods that disproportionately house our city's essential workforce. There are more than 55,000 essential workers in these neighborhoods alone, working as home health aides, building, cleaning service workers, nurses, grocery store clerks, essential workers to many people throughout the city. So it's just been very difficult for them to be able to find and access the proper transportation for them to get to their jobs on time. You know, we have to resume overnight service quickly, and we need to make sure that while safety is a priority, now that there's a full mask mandate, it's important that we do things to restore service. The other things that we need to do is that the inability of the public transit in my community has limited people that are trying to get to create jobs because they can't have the transit necessary for people to come and visit them as well. So we have a lot of issues that around this, around the impacts from COVID-19, and we had at one point some of the highest rates in Queens as well with the impact from people that were getting sick and dying from COVID-19 as well.
Yes, we all read and knew, and it was just so sad, especially in your borough. So thank you for those words. And I'm going to come back to you in just a moment and ask about some of your studies around rider expectations. I'd like to go to Kathy, if I may. Kathy, you know, you and the Metro North team have been busy with improvements across the spectrum pre-COVID. And I'm sure that those initiatives have continued, and now you're wondering and thinking about how that applies post-COVID. Tell us a little bit about some of your work.
Sure. So some of the things that we had worked on pre-COVID, before we even knew that this would ever be an issue, were related to customer communications and improving the customer experience through better communications. So we had a program in the prior capital program known as Customer Service Initiative, or CSI, the goal of which was to improve communications both in the Grand Central Terminal complex as well as in the outlying stations. So that work has continued. It, you know, led up to the pandemic and has continued through the pandemic. And there are various elements of that project. For those of you who passed through Grand Central, we replaced the big boards there, which has been a very visible improvement that's really helped all of our customers. We've also replaced the PA system and improved communications at many of our outlying stations. So this really positions us not only during the pandemic, but post the pandemic to be able to meet customer expectations with respect to more timely communications. With respect to the pandemic itself, there have been a number of initiatives underway to be able to really respond to some of the concerns that we're hearing from our customers with respect not only to information, but also to crowding, to cleanliness, those sorts of things. My phone just so we recently unveiled an update to our train time app, but I'm going to let Phil Eng speak to that. I don't know who was calling me during this. Hold on one second, please.
Maybe speak a little bit to the air purification.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, somebody was calling me, like the perfect timing. This is how these things always work. My phone has not rung all day, and of course it rings during the middle of the presentation. So two things. Number one are the updates to the train time app, which we unveiled recently, but I'm actually going to let Phil speak to that because it was really a Long Island Railroad initiative. This allows us, through the weight of the cars, to be able to estimate and give a range of crowding conditions on the trains. This is something that our customers have really indicated that they're very interested in. And Metro North is actually building on an earlier Long Island Railroad initiative. So I'll let Phil speak about that a little bit more. And then both railroads are doing an air purification pilot right now through Kenora and Merrick to be able to essentially improve the onboard conditions. Obviously, the more that we hear about coronavirus, the more that we know that it's primarily being transmitted through aerosol droplets. And one of the things that we're hearing consistently from our customers is a concern about that and wanting to know that conditions are safe on board the trains. So both railroads are piloting that technology now with a view potentially, if the pilot comes back to be successful, to roll it out more broadly on our fleet sometime next year. So we think that'll be very advantageous with respect to restoring confidence and continuing to have people have confidence that it's safe to travel on board our trains. The only last thing that I would touch upon is that with service being a little bit lower than we typically run, it has provided opportunities to do a bit more work that we might not have been able to do otherwise. We have more track availability, and both railroads, and Phil can speak to it on Long Island, have really profited from having the additional time. So we, for example, were able to accelerate a signal replacement project near Scarsdale that would have been tremendously impactful on our customers. But we were able to move that up for a year and get that done actually quicker than expected. So that was great. And we were also able to really dig in on the Waterbury Signalization Project, which is a precursor to PTC on the Waterbury branch in Connecticut. Shutting down that branch entirely during the spring really enabled us to dig in on that work. So COVID did provide opportunities to accelerate capital work, and I know that's the case on Long Island as well.
So I want to dig in more to this air purification pilot, if I may. And so I'll turn to both you, Kathy, and Phil. Just for the audience, can you tell us a little bit more about, one, what are we measuring other than air and how pure it is? How do we do that? And are there any early results?
So Phil and I can tag team you on this. I mean, essentially there's an ionization phase. There's fresh air is drawn in from outside, and it actually improves the air circulation on the car beyond which it's already circulating. So currently, the systems that are in use filter air 30 times an hour. So this would actually go beyond that, which would be better, frankly, than what CDC recommends for restaurants and some medical facilities. So this would significantly improve air circulation on board our trains. There's a UV element, there's an ionization element, and cold air is drawn in from outside. So those combinations of things actually destroy not only the coronavirus, but other viruses, other cold viruses as well. So even after the COVID pandemic has passed, this is a technology that will overall improve the health of our customers by, attacking other flu viruses, cold viruses, that sort of thing. So there's already been some testing. Apparently there's more EPA testing that is scheduled for January. And we actually are about to launch some in-service testing. So we're feeling very positive about the technology with a bit more testing to happen. We installed it on board about a month and a half ago now. Long Island followed suit a few weeks later. And we're very cautiously, optimistic with respect to the ability to launch this on the fleet at some point next year. And Transit, New York City Transit is also monitoring these results as well. This is all being done, the agencies are doing this, and this is also being done, through our innovation office, Chief Innovation Officer Mark Dowd, working with the Transit Tech COVID Challenge. So there's a lot of people keeping a close eye on this with a view towards being able to, deploy this technology more broadly across the fleets for all of the agencies.
Phil, you have anything to add to that, or?
Kathy covered a lot of it, Melinda.
Okay.
Thank you for asking me. The one thing I will say is that I want people to know that our existing HVA system right now is very safe. We find it very effective. It actually does, as Kathy mentioned, circulate fresh air continuously, recycling on a much more repetitive basis than even the requirements for buildings right now. So from that perspective, what we want to do is build on that technology and actually make our customers and our employees feel even safer, because we just know right now during these unprecedented times, there's so much uncertainty with regards to it. Anything we can do, and in this case, a three-stage or multi-stage system that has been proven by an independent lab to kill airborne viruses like COVID, is something that we're very excited about. And it also will not only help us during the pandemic and through COVID, but as Kathy mentioned, well beyond, because it will kill the flu, it will kill colds, and it'll just be another demonstration that the MTA, Metro North Long Island Railroad, are really looking to enhance safety, enhance the customer experience. And that's key to providing service before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and beyond.
Yes, absolutely. And by the way, as your customer, this is the utmost to me. This is why I'm so interested. And I'd like to ask John to weigh in here. You've done a lot of work in air management and the impact it has on health and safety. In fact, I think I was reading on your website that you even have solar power involved here. So it sort of hits this public health and safety, and also, as Tim mentioned, the environmental sustainability. You've worked with an IH research lab even on recovery plans and HVAC designs. So give us a little sense. I know rail cars is one of your vehicles, if you will, or environments. Tell us some of the learnings and your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so I think what Kathy and Phil just described is how HVAC design is already starting to go through a revolution. Outside of hospitals and infectious disease labs, health was not a design criterion. In other venues, whether it's transportation or entertainment or hospitality, and now health is becoming a design criterion. And so, you know, over the last several months, I've been working with a lot of folks.
Is it just me or is Mike went on?
Yeah, okay.